start with Andrew Bridgen, who I was able to do a short interview with yesterday, but he came up with some remarkable comments, and I've selected two. This is the first one. He said, under the uniparty structure, people are afraid. Either that or they're bought off, and that's from daring to challenge government policy. Now, what he means by the uniparty is that effectively there is no party in power and a party in opposition. There is no debate in Westminster. We simply have one unified political structure, and it's enforcing itself in power by the use of fear. Alex, this is a pretty incredible statement for the supposed democracy of UK in 2023, but it seems that reality is hitting the surface.
I would agree, Brian. The uniparty is a term that came from the United States, where bipartisanship is even more entrenched than here in Britain, where we do have other representation in Parliament. But Mr. Bridgen is perhaps the first sitting MP to say to camera that there is fear dominating the system. Retired members of Parliament have said it. It's gone in memoirs, but perhaps it's a first that it's been said directly to journalists now.
Indeed. Excuse me, indeed. Well, of course, people fairly shortly, a couple of days, will be able to hear that interview with Andrew Bridgen, and he says other very interesting things, but I've selected one other for the audience today. Let's have a look at this and bring it up on screen. The truth is spreading in politics and amongst the general public, but I believe the last place that the truth will surface is in Westminster. And I thought this was a truly damning statement. Alex, over to you again. But if we've got a climate of fear and the last place that truth is going to surface before it appears anywhere else is going to be Westminster, this is really saying that the democratic system around Westminster is completely destroyed, and we must surely have something different which is running the country. Is this the government of occupation, as David Scott might describe it?
Yes, well, you described a trifecta of fear, pride and ignorance being the driving forces behind our members of Parliament. Well, they can't be our representatives then, because they cannot, in those adult states of mind and spirit, represent what we're thinking and feeling and wanting. So they're there for show, but that was said already by Walter Bagehot in the 1870s, the definitive guide to the English Constitution. So yes, there is a mechanism running the show behind the scenes, and that's not empty chatter anymore. We're starting to see the mechanisms, including that the briefing papers members of Parliament get from the House of Commons library are there to give them a shallow sense of having been informed on an issue.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, I'll just add that Andrew Bridgen did say at one point he was gently pulled aside and told he could more or less have whatever he wanted, provided he started to toe the line and didn't speak out about the things he is speaking about, which of course include public safety in respect of vaccines and vaccine damage, but now many other subjects as well. Debbie, let's just bring you in here. We've got a little bit of time in this segment, but what's your take on where we are with our MPs and Westminster now?
Well, it's very interesting you say that, actually, because I wonder who is the master of puppets. And Westminster, as we've said many times before, just seems to be an extension of the WEF. You know, Westminster, Sir Keir Starmer with the Trilateral Commission. Who is pulling the strings? And it leads to a very interesting debate. And I was very fortunate to speak to Ben Rubin yesterday, because we both watched the conference, The Future of Britain, with Sir Tony Blair. And perhaps if people watched some clips of that, they might see that the MPs aren't in control at all, far from it. Is there a secret government behind the scenes? I think there is.
And I would agree with that. Thank you very much, Debbie. Well, back to you, Alex. And well, is there an opposition?
It seems that there isn't in a technical sense. Now, the problem with this uniparty arrangement you've described is that there are historic roots of the political parties. For example, Labour, which is in full Labour and cooperative, started in the churches and the savings institutions known as building societies and cooperative institutions. So it has to suggest more democratic participation than the Conservative Party. Well, that means that when you get a Conservative or Conservative-dominated administration, there will be other ways in which the constitution is avoided and a new constitution written. Powers are left with the Cabinet Office, mandarins, and NGOs and think tanks. Labour is heading for a landslide if we're to believe the polls, and they're usually quite accurate in these matters. So there's going to be a new arrangement if the next Prime Minister is Sir Keir Starmer. And how is he, given the baggage of his party's heritage that he seems very insincere about, going to pull off the same trick? Well, he's going to have to use his party grandees, notably the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, to say that a new fairer settlement needs to be codified and formalised. There will be a different flavour of that. So the Daily Sceptic is covering from a couple of weeks ago that Labour's New Britain Constitution, in an opinion piece by Jay Sorrell, will end parliamentary democracy. Let's see the detail of that. That proposals of this constitution, separate from what Debbie has trailed, but from the same party, a constitution for a new Britain, written up by that same grandee Gordon Brown, are going to destroy Parliament forever. They're designed to do so, according to this think piece. What are the mechanisms? Well, making Parliament subordinate to the judiciary. For more details on what's supposed to happen, listen to A Dissident's Guide to the Constitution under the series rubric on our homepage. Universal English Devolution, that's back to Government Office for the South West, Brian. You helped to see that off first time round under Labour. And I'm not having a go at Labour but more than the Conservatives. It's just a different route to the same uniparty. Britain to be recognised as a multinational state. Well, how did that work for Spain, which calls itself a nation of nations in the constitution? You end up with batons being drawn during elections. And the enshrining of the current social order, so the woke establishment, as a constitution. This is there's more detail. We won't read it all, but read this in particular, that constitutions are not meant to enshrine tax decisions, fiscal decisions. This social fluff, which is going to be codified by Labour, is very dangerous. Running off the bottom of the screen there is the key sentence. This is a group of people who have only recently discovered that politicians lie. Labour is mock sincere, whereas the Conservatives don't have that particular angle to them. So it needs to pretend, like continental politicians, that everyone in public office does their level best. If you want to know where this comes from, it's at the end of last year that the Labour Party brought this out, with Gordon Brown headlining it, A New Britain, renewing our democracy and rebuilding our economy. Look how networked the UK is. Even our offshore islands seem to be part of some trunk network on this cover art. That will be in the show notes. Read this PDF. Most of our viewers would never usually bother, but read it in detail to see what kind of new constitutional arrangements are likely to be imposed, given that the Labour Party is going to be the wing of the uniparty that takes over soon.
Okay, Alex, thank you very much for that.